At 6:03, a United States Navy destroyer is moving through the Strait of Hormuz at transit speed, and somewhere on the Iranian coastline, a fire control radar locks onto its hull. The Strait of Hormuz is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Through that gap, 20 million barrels of oil move every single day, 1/5 of the entire world's energy supply, flowing through a corridor so narrow that what happens in the next 4 minutes could reprice every barrel of crude on Earth before the markets in London open. The crew of that destroyer has rehearsed this moment hundreds of times. What they have not done is live it. Not until now. The radar is active. The clock is running. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. The Strait of Hormuz is not merely a geographic bottleneck. It is a mechanism. Every tanker departing Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, or the UAE must transit this passage. There is no alternative routing, no overland pipeline that can absorb the volume, no bypass that compensates for its absence. If you want to move Gulf energy to the world, you move it through here or it does not move at all. 33 kilometers of open water is the single point of failure for an energy infrastructure that heats homes, runs hospitals, powers military logistics, and keeps the lights on across 4 continents. The consequence of disrupting it is not abstract. It is measured in degrees inside houses in winter, in hours that factories sit idle, in the price per liter that determines whether a trucking company survives or closes. Not eventually, immediately. Within days of a sustained closure or credible threat, a futures markets price in fear faster than tankers can reroute. That is the lever. And Iran has understood this for decades. Their strategic doctrine does not require defeating the United States Navy in open ocean combat. It requires making the cost of operating here high enough, unpredictable enough, and painful enough that the strategic calculus shifts. You do not have to win the fight. You have to make the fight expensive. That is not a bluff. That is 40 years of investment in a specific kind of warfare designed for exactly this geography. Iran's naval arsenal was not built for blue water engagement against carrier strike groups. It was built for this. Shallow coastal water, cluttered radar environments, short warning distances, fast attack craft, naval mines, drone swarms launched from dispersed coastal positions, and anti-ship missiles, including a class of weapons called sea-skimmers. Think of a sea-skimming missile the way you think of a car driving with its headlights off on a highway at night. The faster it moves and the lower it stays, the less time anything has to react. These missiles drop to altitudes measured in single-digit meters above the water surface almost immediately after launch, using the ocean itself as a radar mask. The geometry of radar detection means that a target flying at wave height only becomes visible to ship-based sensors at close range. Close range means compressed reaction time. Compressed reaction time is the entire point. Modern sea-skimming anti-ship missiles also execute terminal phase maneuvers in the final seconds of their flight path, make programmed course corrections, force any interceptor to account for a moving target, not a fixed one. This is not the missile thinking. It is the missile executing preloaded instructions designed specifically to defeat a simple linear intercept solution. The weapon is not intelligent, it is precise. Those are different things, and together they are enough. Against a commercial tanker with no defensive systems whatsoever, a single hit can be catastrophic. Against a warship running full combat systems, it is a fundamentally different problem, but a different problem is not a solved problem. On the morning in question, someone on the Iranian side either miscalculated that difference or made a deliberate decision to test it. Both possibilities are equally revealing. The destroyer operating in the strait is part of a carrier strike group. Its presence is not incidental. Tensions in the region have been elevated for weeks. Tanker harassment incidents have been recorded, logged, and reported through channels that never reach the public. Diplomatic back channels are strained. The strike group is a visible signal delivered in the oldest language navies understand. We are here. We are watching. We are not leaving. The destroyer is at heightened alert, which means every combat system is fully manned and active. Radar is sweeping. Electronic warfare suites are listening, and the crew has run this exact drill enough times that the procedure is not a thought, it is a reflex. Then the electronic warfare suite picks something up, not the missile. The fire control radar going active on the Iranian coastline. Fire control radar is the targeting system that locks onto a vessel and prepares to guide a weapon toward it. The distinction matters enormously. Detection of that radar emission happens before the weapon launches. That additional window of time, a matter of seconds, is not an accident. The electronic warfare systems aboard U.S. surface combatants are specifically engineered to identify those emissions, classify them by frequency and waveform, and associate them with a known threat library in real time, because in missile defense, seconds are not a unit of margin. They are the entire resource. Every system, every procedure, every drill is ultimately about compressing the time between detection and response. The fire control radar is active. The targeting solution is being refined. The clock that began at 6:03 is now measurable in fractions of a minute. The missile launches. It drops to sea-skimming altitude and accelerates. The destroyer's spy, one radar, the large phased array system at the core of the Aegis combat system, acquires the track within seconds. Aegis is to naval air defense what an air traffic control system is to an airport, except instead of managing the safe separation of aircraft, it is managing the simultaneous tracking of hundreds of targets, prioritizing threats by lethality and time to impact, and presenting formatted engagement solutions to the officers who must act on them. Aegis does not fire the weapon. It does everything else. Anti-ship missile inbound, time to impact under 4 minutes. 4 minutes is not enough. In those 4 minutes, all the crew must verify the track is not a sensor artifact. They must correctly classify the threat. They must determine a response option. They must obtain authorization from the commanding officer, and then the system must execute. Every one of those steps involves human beings making high-pressure decisions on incomplete information, knowing that being wrong in either direction carries permanent consequences. Engage a civilian aircraft misidentified as a threat, and you have created an international catastrophe. Hesitate on a real missile, and the ship absorbs a catastrophic hit. The commanding officer authorizes engagement. From the forward deck, an SM-2 standard missile launches in a burst of smoke and exhaust and accelerates to supersonic speed. The Aegis system steers it via data link throughout its flight, meaning the ship is actively adjusting the interceptor's trajectory in real time as both the weapon and the target continue to move. The SM-2 is not chasing the missile. It is calculating where the missile will be and placing the interceptor there first. You can think of it as a chess move. The piece does not go where the threat currently stands. It goes where the threat will stand when the piece arrives. The intercept occurs approximately 2 kilometers from the ship's hull. 1 missile, 1 intercept, clean. From the moment the fire control radar went active to the moment debris entered the water, 4 minutes and a few seconds. Here's where most people assume the story ends. The missile was stopped. The ship is safe. Crisis resolved. That is not how deterrence works. If a United States Navy warship absorbs a missile attack and continues its transit without response, one message has been sent to every armed actor with a coastline in that region: firing at American ships costs nothing. That message, sent even once, even quietly, cannot be unsent. The launch site is already located. The Aegis system recorded the fire control radar's exact position, frequency, and waveform during the targeting sequence. The signal's intelligence is unambiguous. Fighter aircraft from the carrier launched the moment the initial alert went up as part of standard defensive posture. Now they have new tasking. The strike is authorized. Mobile missile launchers are notoriously difficult to destroy. They move between firing events. They exploit terrain. They disperse and reassemble. But a launcher that fires a missile also transmits its exact position to every sensor within range for the duration of its engagement sequence. This one did not relocate quickly enough. 2 aircraft, precision munitions. The mobile launcher is destroyed. A second missile system identified during the approach run is taken out in the same pass. The entire retaliatory sequence, from the moment the inbound missile launched to the moment those aircraft returned to the carrier, takes less than 20 minutes. Step back from that timeline. What this engagement actually demonstrates has layers that do not survive the compression of a news cycle the technology performed. Aegis, the SM-2, the integrated sensors, the data links connecting every hull in the strike group, the electronic warfare suite that bought the extra seconds. All of it functioned exactly as designed under real engagement conditions against a real threat. These systems represent decades of development and billions of dollars invested on the premise that the technology will work when the moment arrives. When the moment arrives and it does work, that is not routine, that is validation. But the more consequential point is strategic. The cost of firing that missile was immediate, precise, and significant. Hardware was destroyed, the crew returned to port, the carrier continued its transit. Deterrence is not a posture. It is a proof that must be re-established through demonstrated consequence. The response made all 3 elements of credible deterrence: immediacy, precision, and significance unmistakably real. And then there is the electronic dimension, which receives the least attention and carries the most explanatory weight. The fire control radar was detected before the weapon launched. The interceptor was guided in real time by data link. The launch site was located through signals intelligence before the debris had settled. Every visible outcome in this engagement rested on invisible infrastructure: the sensors, the networks, the processors, the electronic warfare systems that turned raw electromagnetic emissions into actionable information in real time. The infrastructure nobody films is what made the outcome everybody would have noticed not happen. None of this means the problem is resolved. Iran's strategic calculus has not changed. The geography has not changed. 33 kilometers is still 33 kilometers. Longer-range missiles are in development. Drone programs are expanding in both scale and sophistication. Tactics are evolving specifically around the saturation problem, not defeating a point defense system in single engagement, but testing its limits through volume, through simultaneous launches from dispersed positions, through the simple arithmetic of forcing the defender to be right every time, while the attacker only needs to be right once. The United States Navy holds a decisive advantage in any individual engagement. The broader competition is a grinding asymmetric contest between an offense that is continuously probing for margin and a defense that must absorb that probing indefinitely without error. That pressure does not end. It is the operational reality of every strike group that enters this strait. There was no official statement following this incident. While there rarely is, operational security, diplomatic sensitivity, the desire to avoid escalating a controlled event into a public confrontation. There are a dozen sound institutional reasons these engagements never reach the front page, but they happen. More often than most people realize, and every time one resolves the way this one did, the missile intercepted, the launch site destroyed, the crew unharmed, the carrier holding course, it represents the output of thousands of training hours, decades of engineering, and a system built specifically so that the worst possible moments do not become the last ones. The Strait of Hormuz is open right now. Ships are transiting it today. Tankers loaded with crude oil that will reach refineries, become fuel, and power the uninterrupted machinery of the world. That is not geography. That is the product of a 4-minute engagement that nobody covered.